Hey, Tech Writing class. Professor Norman here, wanting to give some information about drafting to help you as you work on this, not just prior to our partial rough draft being due in a few days, but also for the full report. Since our class meetings have been sparse to give you opportunity to draft, I thought it might be helpful to have this supplemental review of a couple of things. I hope it's helpful. So, starting with kind of a reminder review of the breakdown of the report. This is pulled from the information on the Blackboard site, so definitely check that out. It gives more detail. But just as a reminder, our report has three major sections: the front matter report and then back matter sections. Now, the front matter and back matter we can definitely worry about more after you write the report, because that's the majority of where your high word count needs to come from. But I will just mention real quickly that a lot of the front matter stuff is very perfunctory, meaning it'll be very easy to complete and very simple to complete after the report is done. So try not to worry about any of that until the report itself is written. I will just say the one thing that we haven't talked about much, but that will require a little bit of writing, is the memo of transmittal, which is a document that just kind of, transmittal is something that is put onto a larger report or document so that the reader kind of knows what they're getting into ahead of actually reading it. So it's kind of like a one page, sometimes not even one page summary of the report. An example of the memo of transmittal can be found in the chapter 6 from our technical communication today textbook. The page numbers that I have for the most recent edition, the 6th edition, are 146, and then there's an example that's on page 149. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now, as for the report itself, we have a couple of different sections that I want you to just kind of keep in mind, and they're pretty simple, but it's also one of those things where it's very easy to kind of forget or misunderstand what the purpose of each one is, and that can cause some confusion. So, introduction. Pretty basic idea here. It's going to be an overview of the report where you just kind of preview the different sections. That's very helpful for a reader. In this report, you will find it's basically an elongated version of the purpose statement, but it should also provide kind of like some context. This is especially helpful for me as one of your readers, right? If we go all the way back to the beginning of the semester and thinking about the reader profile, you can anticipate that some of your readers might not be as intimately familiar with your topic. So it's important to kind of give some background information, some context. You don't have to get into a ton of like facts or anything with it, but just kind of explain what's going on. Some of you guys are working on topics that are very technical, and being in the English field, I have no idea what they're about. So it's really helpful to me for you to just give a little bit of background information on the problem. So plan for, a paragraph or two to cover the introduction. As far as the methodology section goes, we haven't talked about this one much yet because we've been so focused on the recommendations. But as far as the methodology goes, there are basically two components to this that I want you to keep in mind. The first part should be sort of a reflective, sort of narrative almost of the research process. So it's a spot where you can use the word I. You do not have to. There's always a good way to formalize it by saying stuff like the research was preceded by, just kind of explaining it more in like terms of the research. Research was found by looking at this, this, and this, that kind of thing. But definitely go through that. It might be a pretty short section, the research process part, just because it might just be, I looked at a bunch of articles on the internet. You want to sound a little bit more impressive than that, but that might be the majority of it. However, I know some of you guys are doing interviews, and so you might want to kind of explain what your thought process was there. Definitely explain the types of articles that you find too. If they're articles that come from companies or manufacturers or something like that, you kind of have to explain what your thinking was for why you selected some of those things. And then besides that, there should be a section where you have a summary and evaluation for all the research. And that can look very similar to what the warning report sections looked like, where you just kind of summarize each one and evaluate each one just briefly. But that should be a couple of paragraphs long by doing that. Then we get into the body, and that's what we've been focusing on in our brainstorming a lot and with your outlines. That should be the recommendations, the justification, and analysis with sources, which I'll talk about more in just a little bit. But that's a very, very important section. That should be the majority of the report, even if that's only like 60-75%. It should definitely be mostly recommendations and explaining those recommendations out. Then the conclusion, that's the final recommendation. You've given three possible recommendations. That's your spot to kind of say, yeah, recommendation two is the best and explain why. And then the what's next, it's good to always kind of forecast, we need to hold a meeting with the board of directors immediately to discuss recommendation number two, because that's the best thing. Or we need to implement recommendation one this afternoon because it's that easy to do, something like that. And then we have the works cited or references page. I think most people are doing it in works cited format, but that should be 6 to 8 sources. Technically, the works cited and references page can also be considered back matter. I just didn't include it in that spot when I made the original assignment sheet, so I won't include it here. But the other thing that might go into back matter is just an index of technical terminology. If you are using technical terms, and that can be abbreviations for things, that can be, specialized equipment or machinery or something like that, could be organizations that you are kind of referring to multiple times. It's good to have an index of those terms in the back of the document in just a page that just says something like, technical terminology at the top, and then you just have a list with some definitions. Okay. And then as far as the recommendation, this should be kind of review, but I do want to mention it. You remember, you want to have three kind of distinct alternative options, meaning that they don't just look exactly the same. And so if you remember, I kind of gave three options. One might be that we, with the issue of, like online classes, one is like embrace it, embrace those online options and shift to a primarily online institution where, most of the classes that we offer are available online and all that kind of stuff. The other option might be to do what we're doing now, but with some better training. And then the other option would be to resist online education options and market the human connection. Keep in mind that while doing nothing is a viable option, you don't want to just kind of drop it there and say, I guess you can do that. You want to try and make sure that it's clear that each one is feasible, that it's reasonable, that it might not be the best option, but that there is a rationale for doing this besides just, we're going to let our company go up in flames, right? So that's technically possible with the three options that I've got here. There are many institutions in the country that resist online education because they want to market the campus experience. Now, whether that's smart for VU to do, sure, we can kind of talk about that back and forth, but the same thing is true with you guys. A lot of you guys are talking about topics that have to do with progress. Just saying, now we're going to ignore this progress. You've got to have a really good rationale for that besides just, well, in 20 years we'll all be dead anyway. I don't think anybody's going for that. That's kind of an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying, I hope. And then as you're kind of thinking about your recommendations, it's a good idea to kind of think about them in comparison to each other. So maybe kind of start with the simple options and progress to the more complex options. So training face-to-face instructors to also teach more online classes, that's a very simple switch. Purchasing more equipment or better equipment, right? People are gonna be a little bit more like, okay, that's gonna cost a little bit more. I don't know about that. And then hiring more people. Okay, now we're talking about, like more complex requirements there, especially when it comes to cost. So, try instead of like a bunch of jumbled up stuff where this one costs more, but it's also more feasible to do. This one's more feasible to do, costs more. This one costs more, and it's more feasible. It's like instead of jumping back and forth, really think about which of the ones would be simplest to implement, and then kind of progress to the ones that are maybe a little bit more complex and or just logistically or due to monetary cost, just less realistic. And then that'll kind of set you up really well for the final recommendation as well. This is a concept that you may have seen something about this in, like English 101 or another, basic composition class. The pie paragraph, our paragraphs are a little bit different than for like, essays, but the idea is always the same, where you start off each paragraph with a point, what is the point, what supporting point or major point are you making? Then you get into the information, and that's usually going to come from source information in this particular report. And then you have the explanation. What do we take from this? So in our case, you can think about it like, the point is going to be a specific element of a recommendation. Your source information is going to come from, your sources, obviously. And then the explanation is where you can start to analyze. This is very similar to what we're going through, or this is a little bit different than what we're going through, but we can use it as a model, and you can kind of relegate that back to the strengths and weaknesses analysis that you have to do in this section anyway. Try to do this for every single time that you integrate a new source, and you'll have really rich, detailed, full paragraphs, and obviously it'll help you with your word count as well. Some principles of source integration. I've already seen good evidence that people are finding lots of good sources, but sometimes it's kind of hard to tell whether you've got the good stuff in the good sources until you actually implement them into the papers. So I just kind of wanted to give a couple of reminders, and if you realize, nope, I don't got that, then there's still plenty of time to make changes. So in general, here are some three principles of source integration. You should always integrate information that's supportive, meaning it's evidence that gives you info that you cannot provide on your own, meaning that it's really technical or it's really specific, not just a general overview. I've seen papers where people just talk about, like, I don't know, electric vehicles, and they say stuff like electric vehicles provide a lot of possibilities, and that's the quote, right? That is not a supportive quote. You can obviously say that. I can say that, and I don't know anything about electric vehicles, right? Anybody can say that they have a lot of possibilities, but the sources should provide some specifics for, like, how many of these have been produced in the last, 2-3 years or whatever, how effective they are, that kind of stuff. It should provide extra stuff. And then along the same lines, it should be really, really precise. It should always point to a very specific idea and try and eliminate as much ambiguity as possible. It should be really, really clear whether something is effective or not. And it shouldn't just be some random person saying, like, oh, well, these electric vehicles seem to really be doing well now. Again, that's so vague that it doesn't mean anything. But I've seen very vague lines like that from source quotes and stuff like that in the past. And then representative. You should always try and find spots in multiple sources where maybe you can use it just to show that there are more than one source, more than one, location where you can find this type of information. And that avoids that idea of it being anecdotal. So some examples, it's really important to have kind of like facts and figures whenever possible. So I've got an example here that's supportive but not really precise or representative, where it says, according to a news story from Steve Connor of The Independent, a technical advance based on an edible salt used in the manufacture of tofu could revolutionize the production of future solar panels to make them less expensive, more flexible, and easy to use. So that's kind of an interesting idea, but it also doesn't say anything, right? It says that this technical advance could revolutionize the production of future solar panels, which doesn't actually mean that it is or will or anything like that. It also doesn't really say what it means that they'll be less expensive, more flexible, or easier to use. What does that mean in terms of like trying to figure out whether or not these solar panels are going to work in the future? So a more precise and representative version would be to, kind of start off exactly the same way. It's, as you'll notice, it's from the same article. It just depends on what you're actually pulling from the article. So instead of pulling something from the very beginning where it's just like this really general overview statement, a more specific phrase from that would be that solar technology is improving compared to old panels, quote, moving from about 2% to 15% or more. And then that's not very real source would be integrated afterwards. Similarly, a story from Journal of Solar Panels Are Good states, and then I would have another fact, and that would make it more representative because it's not just one source that says, yeah, these solar panels are getting better. Please use real sources and not fake ones, but you get the idea. Okay, and a few other odds and ends. Title formats. Just remember that when you're using titles, when you're citing by article titles or journal titles, they have to be formatted in the right way. And the general rule of thumb is that books and journals and website titles are always italicized. And then articles and web pages or web articles are always quoted. And you can see some examples there. Another thing you want to do, and this is really important when we're getting into our recommendation stuff, you want to make sure that you have a really professional and confident style. So you really want to take out, any kind of like uncertain words like think or believe or in my opinion, that kind of stuff. So you use phrasing instead of saying, I think option 2 is best, you say, I recommend option 2. Just little changes right there can be really, really helpful. And then other formatting and design issues, check chapter 17, that's in the 6th edition, of course. That's the designing documents chapter. And just remember the different ideas of the different levels of headers. Like the main headers should probably be centered in the page, and then you move over to the left, and some of them are bigger, and then they kind of get smaller as they go along, and some of them are separate from the paragraph, and some of them are, integrated into the paragraph. It can be kind of tricky, but just follow the different levels of headers and you'll be okay. That's on page 490 if you're using the 6th edition. And then spacing. Spacing can be kind of tricky as well. In general, we single space the entire thing, but then between sections, sometimes you need an extra space. So here's the way it works. Single space, meaning no blank spaces between lines. You single space in the paragraphs. And then you double space, meaning there's one blank space between paragraphs. and then you triple space before a new section, meaning there would be two blank lines, and that just kind of shows that there's an extra, break. That shows that we're shifting even bigger. So that spacing stuff, it's annoying, but it is something for us to get exactly right.